always introduce him like Murphy introduces Judith Persicelli, that he's the person who doesn't need any introduction. I didn't tell him that I was going to hold this up. But
Yep.
not to be unfair, I should give him his proper introduction. Bob has shared his passion, enthusiasm, and knowledge of music through his work as a conductor, composer, educator, writer, and lecturer. He's conducted major orchestras and opera performances throughout New Jersey, the US, and as a guest conductor internationally. We, of course, know him best as the conductor and artistic director of the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey, whose history will be the subject of our meeting this evening. Maestro Butts received his MA in musicology from the University of Iowa, studied conducting at Juilliard, and received a DMA in conducting from the American Conservatory of Music in Chicago. He currently teaches at both Drew and Montclair State, and is a longtime favorite instructor for the Friends of the Madison Public Library's mini course program. Had to get my commercial in. As we did last month, and Susan explained, if you have a question, submit it to the chat, and we will read it to Bob following his formal presentation. I now give you, Maestro, Dr. Butts.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you to everybody. It's really great to see everybody. I'm assuming you can see me. I'm having trouble seeing me.
Did you put yourself on speaker?
I just did, yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem to want to show me. It shows whoever was up there last. So I'm not really sure what to do, but I'll figure it out at some point.
We see you.
I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm really thrilled and honored that you asked me to talk about the orchestra and the orchestra in Madison and the impact it's had on Madison and our relationship with many Madison organizations and businesses. So a little bit of a history about the orchestra. But before I talk about the orchestra, I have to talk a little bit about myself. And this, I don't mean this to be a talk about Bob, but the orchestra is me. I am the orchestra. I founded the orchestra, which is rather unusual, I think, in overall instances. People don't usually found orchestras. So a little bit about who I am, and because it does focus on who the orchestra is and why the orchestra is who it is. My background is I've always been interested in music and the arts. I've always been interested in history. Always been interested in words as well as music. So a varied interest in many directions. And musically, I've always had my feet in two camps. Usually in the music world, you have people who are either in the popular music world or in the classical music world. And as long as I can remember, I've been in both worlds. I played a lot of, I played guitar, I sang and did my work and wrote music. Even when I was I think I wrote my first song when I was 14. I was interested in classical music up until February of 1964. And if anybody remembers what happened in February of 1964 on a Sunday night on the Ed Sullivan Show was the Beatles. And the next day I got a guitar. And so my interests have always been in both areas. I've always been a performer, a singer, a guitar player, whatever I could, it was mostly what I did. And I also was interested in rock and roll and country music and folk music. So I also played the banjo and a little bit of fiddle. And that was basically who I was, wandering between doing scholarly pursuits and performing pursuits. And so in late 70s, I realized maybe I should get my master's degree. So I went to the University of Iowa, pretty much stopped playing popular music and focused on musicology. So I'm a music historian by my degree, by my graduate school work. And I learned to play early music. And that was my specialty, was 17th, 18th century music. If you know anything about music history, you know that what we call the music in the period of the 17th and 18th century, that's the Baroque period. And so music of the 17th and 18th century is Baroque music. And since I was playing the recorder and the lute and the viola da gamba and the harpsichord and studying Baroque music, that's where the Baroque orchestra got its name, which we'll come to because that's still a few years in the future. But I never gave up my popular music interest as well. And while I was at the university, I did join a band, and I toured for a year with a country rock band, more country music than rock and roll. And people often ask, well, how can somebody be in Baroque music and country music at the same time? And I always tell them that what we call country music and bluegrass music in the United States is Baroque music. Most of the style was derived from publications in 17th century England that were brought over here, and the style lasted and influenced the early country music, the early mountain music, and bluegrass music. Notice, and I always wrote songs and composed music, but what you might notice is conducting is not in there. Scholarship, academia, all the other stuff is. But I came to conducting rather late. So we're doing all this. I toured. I lived in Nashville for a few years. Realized I wasn't going to be a big country music star. Came back to New Jersey and started doing some work as a music critic. I got my first college teaching position as a sabbatical replacement at Drew University in 1990, where I taught composition. So one of the ironies of that is typical of life. When I did my 4 years of graduate study at the University of Iowa, there was one type of music I did not really study at all, and that was electronic composition. So what is the first course I'm asked to teach in a college situation? Electronic composition. So I spent the summer 1990 at an electronic music studio at Drew. For those who aren't aware of it, Drew has the original Moog synthesizer. So I was teaching on the famous Moog synthesizer that was used by Wendy Carlos in the 1960s to record switched on Bach. I'm not sure where on campus it is now, since they moved the music building and built the new theater and arts building. But I did that. And then my next job was adjunct position at Sussex County College in Newton, and again teaching music history this time, which it was what my degree was in. But because it's a small college, you're often asked to do several things. And one of the things they asked me to do was conduct the community college choir. I spent that summer studying everything I could, talking with people. Ann Matlack, who is at Grace Church, and I'm sure you know, and conducts Harmonium, was a big help to me. And when I started the semester, I found I really loved conducting. It was somewhat of a surprise to me. I found that I thought I was pretty good at it, so I wanted to pursue it further. I was being an early music person and playing recorder, playing gamba, and like I said, the harpsichord and the lute. I was with some early music ensembles, and I would conduct some of their rehearsals. Then in 1995, I worked with the Highland Park Recorder Society, preparing them for a concert that was going to be an orchestra concert. It was going to be the recorders playing the music of Henry Purcell and strings and the full orchestra sound. It was so rewarding to me that I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So in 1990, at this time, I pretty much made music a secondary factor in my life. I was making my living working in the computer world. And I was working for a company in Boonton. And if you know anything about Boonton, there's an old vaudeville theater there called the Darris Theater. It's a historic theater in Boonton. And I went to see it and talked with Tom Timbrook, who was the owner, and we had lunch. And he asked me if I'd like to bring in a Baroque ensemble to play. And I said, you know what I'd really love? I've been dying to have my own orchestra. And he said, well, he's been dying to have an orchestra in residence at the theater. So he offered to let me use the space for rehearsals and for concerts for free in return for me having my orchestra there. And so that night I wrote some press releases and said, I'm going to start an orchestra and we're going to specialize in music of 17th and 18th century. And hence we were in Boonton, so I called it the Baroque Orchestra of Boonton. So we spent our first several years in Boonton, and a lot of things happened almost serendipity. They happened by coincidence. I met people who helped me out, who were there. I had great people on my first board, some of whom, one of whom, Joanne Bates, is a guest here tonight. Hey, hi, Joanne. Joanne was our first president, and she's still the president now, 20-some years, 25 years later. So I founded the orchestra. We did a couple of concerts, and we did almost all Baroque music. But we also did some pop music. Remember, I had my hand in that pop music world as well. So occasionally we would do a concert, and I'd get out my guitar and do a chamber music concert that would be half Baroque and half folk music, country music. And then I met a singer named Patricia Brady Danzig, and she wanted to do a concert. She was a soprano. She wanted to do a holiday concert. And so she hired the orchestra, and this triggered a lot of things. She hired us to do a holiday concert. We did it at the Morristown Unitarian Church. And because I'm still in the Baroque framework, we call our holiday concert a wassail concert, because wassail is a Baroque term. It means party. It's usually affiliated with Christmas time. You go, wassail is a drink. I'm told it's a very strong drink traditionally. And so we did our wassail concert. The other thing that Pat did for me was she introduced me to people and got me my first international conducting work, which was in a small city called Botoșani in Romania. And so in the Christmas time of 1999, I made my international debut in this little city in very remote area of Romania, and learned how to conduct and learned how to work with a big professional orchestra. And I came back. Patricia had stopped singing at the time, but the musicians and I loved doing our wassail concert. So we needed a place to do our wassail concert. And that's when the orchestra starts its relationship with Madison. Because for 3 years, we did a wassail concert at the Methodist Church in Madison. And that was our first concerts there. They proved to be very successful, and we loved being there. Coincidentally, in 1997, I started teaching at the mini courses at the Madison Public Library. So it was like everything was leading to the orchestra being in Madison. But it needed one more stimulation, and that was we lost our venue in Boonton. And I wasn't sure where to bring the orchestra, so I called friends that I knew in the music world, and one of whom was, again, Ann Matlack. And I called Ann and I said, do you know of any venue? Because, I mean, we don't have much money. Venues, theaters can be very expensive. And she said, well, why don't you come play at Grace Church and be part of Grace Community Music? So in fall of 2002, the Baroque Orchestra of Boonton became the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey and relocated to Madison. So that's pretty much how we got to Madison. And we've been here ever since, performing at Grace Church, performing at the new Madison Community Arts Center, and performing at College of St. Elizabeth. Why did we go to the College of St. Elizabeth? Because in 2008, Grace Church underwent major renovations and we couldn't use the church. And so coincidentally, St. Elizabeth had just built this state-of-the-art brand new concert hall. And so we started splitting our concerts between the College of St. Elizabeth and Grace Church. So those are a couple of things. One of the other things, as soon as we moved to Madison, is I made friends with a Madison resident, one of the really great pianists that I know, Paul Zeigler. I knew Paul because he'd been doing a lot of concerts where he was performing the entire Beethoven piano sonata cycle. All 32 sonatas Paul eventually performed in concert in this area. And Paul said he would like to be one of the first pianists to do all the piano sonatas and all the piano concertos. And so the orchestra moved another notch up. I moved another notch up as a conductor. We explored Beethoven, which expanded our repertoire far beyond the Baroque. The Baroque is set to end in 1750. Beethoven died in 1827. So we're now moving into the classical period and the Romantic period. And so with Paul, we've developed a relationship. Paul has performed with us, I'd say in the past 8 to 17 years, Paul has performed with us 14 concertos, including 2 that he himself composed. So those are some of the things that started us. Now going back to me and collaboration, one of the things when I founded the orchestra was I wanted it to be part of the community. I didn't want it to just be an orchestra. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted it to be an integral part of the community. And so one of the ways that I wanted to do this was through collaborations, working with other arts organizations. One of the very first concerts we did at Grace Church was in collaboration with Harmonium, and then other concerts with the Grace Community Church, Grace Community Music Program through the church choir. And I coincidentally met some opera people, and I started conducting opera in Westfield with the Little Opera Company, in which the orchestra for the operas was the Baroque Orchestra. And we started with Mozart, The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, Donizetti's L'Elisir d'Amore. That became successful, so I then joined the New Jersey Concert Opera, and they performed in Plainfield. And so I was working in Plainfield and Westfield. The Baroque Orchestra was the orchestra in residence for both companies. And I learned how to be an opera an opera conductor. So but what happened was the Little Opera Company, again, ran into financial problems. The New Jersey Concert Opera ran into financial problems. And so 2000, and we were doing, between them, I was doing like 7, 8 operas a year. And I didn't want to give that up. So in 2006, when the New Jersey Concert Opera folded, I wanted to do something in the summer when we weren't doing a season. So I inaugurated, and with the help of my board and the orchestra, the Summer Music Festival, which we've done every year since. And the Summer Music Festival was, again, at least 1 concert at the College of St. Elizabeth, and probably 2 or 3 concerts at Grace Church, and other events around Madison. Included in this was 1 opera in concert, 1 orchestra concert, 1 chamber music concert, and 1 cabaret night. So we did a number of these and inaugurated that whole series. In our opera selection, we still do an opera every summer. This summer, obviously, we were not able to. We did do a festival, a virtual festival, which I'll talk about later, but we did not do an opera because we just couldn't have all those people rehearsing together, and certainly couldn't have an audience. So we've done a lot of this, and we continue to do our collaborations. There are many important milestones that I'm not mentioning because I see time flies awfully fast. And those of you who have taken my courses know that I tend to believe that I can somehow talk for an hour and play an hour's worth of music in an hour and 60 minutes, and it never has worked out yet. So I'm talking, trying to move on, and I do want to play a few things. So I've talked about operas. We do operas in English, we do operas in the original language. So let me take a break from talking, and let me set it up, and let me play you one of the videos. I've got several videos, and that I would like to share with you of opera performances. They're each about 3 to 4 minutes long. And let's listen to a little bit of the Baroque Orchestra in Madison playing operas by Handel, Mozart, Wagner. We are the only orchestra in all of New Jersey to have done 3 operas by Richard Wagner. Now, there's some of you who might be saying that when you hear that, you might say, wow, that's amazing. There are others who might say, why? So Wagner is one of those composers where you either think he's the greatest and love him, or you say you avoid Wagner. But we're the only ones we're the only orchestra that's done 3 Handel operas and 3 Wagner operas. So let me get it going, do my share screen, and let's listen to a little bit of the Baroque Orchestra.
I cannot bear, I cannot bear, I cannot bear. Shall leave the mountain, I cannot bear, I cannot bear. Forsake the mountains, I cannot bear, I cannot bear, I cannot bear. No, I cannot bear.
That's a little bit of BONJ bringing opera to the area, which is gone pretty well, I think, and we continue to do it pretty steadily. 2008 was also a big year for the orchestra in that we started to get more involved with working with young artists. Steve Young and Lisa Young, Lisa being vice president of the orchestra, started what was the Pearl and Julius Young music competition. And for 10 years, we awarded a first prize but we also awarded second and third prizes. But more than the prize itself, we gave the young artists an opportunity to play complete concertos with the orchestra in concert. So recognizing it was open to kids or young artists from 16 to 22. Most of our winners were in the age 16. I think we had 2 that were 16, 1 that was 17, and the rest were like 19 or 20. Many of them have gone on to major careers. Celil, Kaya, guitar player who won in 2012, has performed concertos with the Buffalo Philharmonic, the Baltimore Symphony, and has recorded 2 major CDs of concertos. And the first one he ever played was with us as part of the competition. And many of our other young artists as well have gone on already to play. Miranda Liu is concertmaster with an orchestra in Budapest, and she is the leader of a chamber music festival in Hungary. So these artists have gone on to nice careers, and all because we brought them in and gave them award. We also started, I think the same year or shortly after, awarding the Cynthia Platt Scholarship, which was money given to us to hold to award to young artists through the years. So the next video I would like to show is just some of our incredible young artists that have performed with us. There are probably 15 that I could have shown, but I chose just a couple. that's a little bit of our young artist program. 2008 was also a year that we expanded our collaborations in a major way, in that we have been expanding ever since. So that, like the orchestra, most orchestras, similar community type orchestras like ours, will do 3 to 5 concerts a year, and they just do their concerts, and you buy a ticket, you go to the concert. From the beginning, I wanted to have an orchestra that did 3 to 5 concerts a year in the traditional go to the theater fashion, but also performed in collaboration with organizations and ensembles in the area. And in 2008, we started one of our major collaborations, which was with Washington's headquarters, Morristown National Historical Park. If you can believe this, I received an email from Jude Pfister. Jude is the Chief of Cultural Resources at Washington's headquarters at the museum. And the email started, "Hi, you don't know me. I have a 1693 manuscript of an opera by Alessandro Scarlatti. Would you be interested in looking at it?" And I sat there and I looked at my computer screen and I said, somebody's playing a joke on me. You don't just find a full opera manuscript by one of the most important composers of the late 17th century in the archives of Washington's headquarters in Morristown. Well, I went and checked, and sure enough, it is. It's an opera oratorio called La Giudita, the story of Judith and Holofernes, by Alessandro Scarlatti, and the 1693 manuscript is right there in the archives, in the collection. So the first thing we did with the National Park was I edited the manuscript, created a modern edition of it, and we gave the first modern production of it. I don't think it was even performed in Scarlatti's time. He revised it several years later, and that version, I think, is the only one that was ever performed. So I think the music that we did was not just bringing back to life an old opera by Scarlatti, but playing it as a world premiere in its original form. And we've since done it 3 times at the College of St. Elizabeth. We've done excerpts from it at Grace Church. And we've continued our relationship with the park. And so that at least once a year, usually 2 or 3 times a year, we do a concert that's called Music and Manuscripts, in which Jude will find a manuscript of some kind, and then I'll put together a music program that's somehow related to it. For example, last year we did a concert from the Elizabethan era. So my guitar friend Stanley Alexandrovich and singer Sunji Kim sang some songs I composed based on Elizabethan poetry. And then he played some songs from the Elizabethan period, and Jude brought out his manuscript of a document signed by Queen Elizabeth I, so that the audience could experience music from the time and see a manuscript related to the music. So we've done several concerts of that nature with the park. We also started a relationship with Loyola Institute in Morristown, and a very rewarding relationship with the Madison YMCA. And the relationship with the Madison YMCA enabled us to do 2 big concerts that mixed opera and Broadway, and enabled us to feature Madison residents. We have been fortunate. There are an incredible number of incredible musicians here in Madison. And I'm sure you know some of them. Jerry Vezza was mentioned earlier, really outstanding jazz pianist. We have used John Pivarnik, who is a wonderful accompanist as well as a soloist in his own right. Paul Zeigler, who now lives in New York, but was a Madison resident for 20-some years. And in the YMCA concerts, we managed to work with 4 major singers who reside in Madison or work in Madison. It was arranged by Gary Pate, who is a tenor in the Metropolitan Opera Chorus. And in these concerts, we've also featured Tom Sellwood, who has sung in West End musicals and is a musical theater specialist. Marc Persing, who also sings, lives in Madison, sings at the Metropolitan Opera. And probably the biggest opera star living in Madison is Marc Delavan, who has sung major roles throughout the world in every major opera house. So we have made these collaborations a part of the community, and we continue to do so as much as possible. So my next video that I'd like to show is some of these collaborations and some of these wonderful Madison artists, including Grace Community Chorus, who got us our start, one of the very first concerts we did in Madison, and Harmonium, who sang the choral parts for the Scarlatti production, and the YMCA and others.
The finest fire, like a refiner's fire, and who shall stand when he appeareth? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire.
Some of our collaborations and some of our wonderful Madison residents who have performed with us. For those who are wondering, that piece that Paul Zeigler did at the end was the George Gershwin Piano Concerto. And I think we might be the first orchestra to have played that piece here in Madison, in this area. So this has always been a big part of what the orchestra has done and who the orchestra is, who I am, and what we try to do to bring to the community. Another aspect of what I do, as was mentioned, is I'm a composer, and I compose and have had several of my works performed by myself, by the orchestra, by our musicians, and by many international artists as well. And I think I've had some pieces premiered in Poland, Italy, England, France, and one piece in Korea. So I am a composer and I recognize new music, even though it's the Baroque Orchestra. So you might say, why is it called the Baroque Orchestra? You've got Gershwin here, you did some, I heard some Mendelssohn, some of these other composers. Well, we've wrestled with that. And for a number of years, we looked into changing the name of the orchestra, because we obviously don't do just Baroque music anymore. In fact, we haven't for a long time. We do a lot of Baroque music. We do a lot of Handel and Bach and Telemann and Vivaldi, but we don't just do it. So why didn't we change the name? We consulted with several business experts, and they told, and this was when the orchestra was already in existence, had built a strong reputation, and was here for about 16, 17 years already. When we looked for it, and we were told that there's two things to weigh. One, the fact that people know who we are, and so even though maybe the name is not as appropriate because we're not just a Baroque orchestra, the other hand, we have name recognition. We've had brand development, and we would have to be starting from scratch. So that's why, even though we play music written yesterday, as well as music written 400 years ago, it's called the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey. And we'll keep that name because we've developed our reputation, we've developed our brand. But as I mentioned, in addition to doing early music, I believe strongly in supporting new music, and new music has to be performed. And the Baroque Orchestra has performed more world premieres of compositions by international and local composers than any other orchestra in New Jersey, including the New Jersey Symphony, at least in the last 10 or 15 years. We are the only orchestra in the United States to work with a composer named Marco Frisina. Marco Frisina is a composer in Rome, works at the Vatican, works with the Pope as a composer and a conductor. And he's one of the most famous living composers in Europe. And his work, the only orchestra that's performing his works here is us. And we have performed his works at St. Elizabeth, we've performed his music at Grace Church, and we have performed his music in New York at the National Opera Center. But we've also performed my compositions, music by local art composers, Ting Ho, Stanley Grill, Amy Reich, and others. So let me just play a short clip of some of the world premieres that we have done. So I have two more things that I like to mention that the orchestra does and has done, and two more videos to play. So I apologize, I'm gonna go a little bit over. I always go a little bit over my time. And you know, the other things we've done, I have several videos I thought I could play, which I can't. We work internationally with several groups. We started in 2015 with a very successful relationship with the New York Classical Music Society, bringing their artists from around the world here and bringing our musicians to Venice and other places in Europe, working with international artists, and many collaborations with Mars Tourism, and just all groups that we help and working together in the community. So I have two more videos that I would like to show, but I want to talk about, so what is tomorrow? And what are we doing today? How did the orchestra respond to the pandemic and the whole health crisis of the past year, when most organizations folded? We continued our collaborative efforts with a group called Keys to Success. And Keys to Success is an organization that helps bring keyboard instruction and opportunities kids in grades K through 6 in Newark. And we've been working together with them. And I co-composed with the composer Elijah Sewell's a set of variations on the tune Simple Gifts. And we were going to perform it together in April. One of the unique things is, instead of just bringing the kids on stage and letting them show that they play, we were going to have a piece in which those kids could actually experience playing with an orchestra. So since Elijah worked with the kids, he composed the music for the pianists to play, because he knew their skill level and what they could do and couldn't do. And I composed the music for my orchestra to play. Well, when we couldn't do the concert, instead what we did was we did a virtual concert. Jihoon Kriska, who is the president and founder of Keys to Success, got together with some of her kids, and they recorded their parts at home on their phones or whatever individually. And I contacted musicians from the Baroque Orchestra, and we recorded our parts individually. And then we put it all together and we did the performance virtually. In order to stay in touch with our audience as well, with the orchestra, I created a talk show. The glory of contemporary technology. Because of Zoom, we can stay connected. And so I thought in May, okay, I wanted to stay in touch with the musicians, with my artists, with my colleagues, with my friends, with the orchestra board, and with our audience, patrons, and listeners. So I started a show in which I said, let's meet on Saturday mornings through Zoom, get your cup of coffee, have brunch, and we'll listen to some music, talk about music, and meet the artists. And I called the show Bach, Bagels, and Bob. But instead of meeting at a local restaurant, we meet at home, and you have to supply your own bagels and your own coffee, but I'll supply myself and I'll supply some music. Bach, because it's Baroque, and not that everything we play is Bach or even Baroque, but we're now doing our 8th episode. We have one scheduled for November 7th is our next one, and it's going to be a Meet the Composers episode. And I've got several of the artists whose music you just heard are going to be my guests. Stanley Grill, Amy Reich, and Elijah Sewell are going to be guests to talk about composing the music that we played. I also have used the venue of online to create and promote recovery. So we've created little slides for Madison businesses that before my show starts, I say, support the businesses you can. For economic recovery, for staying economically viable. I'm grateful to Eric Hafen and Jerry Vezza for helping me work at the Madison Community Arts Center, and to the organizations that were able to sponsor us, not necessarily financially, but with spirit and collaboration, again, working towards recovery. And then there was our summer festival. What are we going to do with our summer festival? Can't have a summer festival. Well, yes, we can. What we did was by the time we get to July, we could have small groups of people in a large space, being as safe as possible. And so Brian Ferran, who does all of the recording work for us, working with Eric and at the Art Center, musicians came and they played. And we had pianists, Paul Zeigler, John Pivarnik were participating, singers who were accompanied by piano, Stanley, who played solo guitar recital, and then we put them together and we broadcast them on YouTube and Facebook and websites as part of the virtual Summer Music Festival at 7:30 on Sunday evenings. It was free. We asked for donations, but basically it's a way to keep everything going, to keep us all supporting, to keep the arts alive, to keep the music alive, and to stay connected and to remain part of the community. So as I said, I have two more videos I would like to play, one of which is showing how we did this virtual events, which we will start with the putting together of the simple gifts with the kids and with the orchestra musicians. And then I'll show a little bit of Bach Bagels and Bob and a little bit of the start of our summer festival program. So I want to share the screen. I want to make mention of a few of organizations in Madison that have helped us, that have been supportive, that enabled us to do our virtual summer festival. I know many of you were able to watch some of those wonderful concerts, and I'd like to let you know that we are going to continue doing virtual concerts, even when we get back to doing full live concerts. And I think we're actually going to be collaborating with the New York Classical Music Society on a virtual international music festival. So lots of things in the future, and I want to thank a number of people and organizations in Madison, especially the Madison Community Arts Center, Eric Athan, who has opened the doors for us to do our recording for our festival concerts in Madison. A lot of what we do is also collaboration with Madison Arts and Cultural Alliance, MACA, very important organization here in Madison, and the Madison Downtown Development Commission. In return for our use of the facilities and other help, we've been asked to help with the recovery as we all try to recover. These are some of the businesses in Madison, Madison Bagel Cafe, which I frequently go to do my composing Those who know me know I don't compose at home. I compose at a cafe while I'm sipping coffee or something. So the Madison Bagel Cafe lets me sit there and compose, and their food is excellent. Salvatore Minardi, his salon here in Madison, that's who I go to. So if you like my new hairstyle and everything, Salvatore is to thank for that. Shanghai Jazz, one of the leading jazz places in the world, is right here in Madison. Romanelli's, many of you have joined us at Romanelli's for our post-concert parties, our annual celebrations, where they do a great job with everything.
Hi, I'm Timmie Cole. I'm a soprano and a musician and a teacher, and I'm super excited to be sharing the Summer 2020 Virtual Music Festival with you.
Hi, I'm John Pivarnik, Madison resident. Proud to be part of this wonderful event in this wonderful space, which the community of Madison is so blessed to have.
Hi, this is Roosevelt. Welcome to the 2020 Virtual Summer Festival. I hope you enjoy our performances.
I hope you join us at our virtual concert series, 2020 Summer. It's going to be a really great concert. Thank you so much.
Hello, this is Jerry Vezza. I'm president of the Madison Arts and Culture Alliance, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this 2020 Summer Music Festival, which is happening here at the Madison Community Arts Center. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Eric Hafen. I'm the Director of Arts and Events for the Borough of Madison. Just want to let you know that the 2020 Summer Music Festival with the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey will be here at the new Madison Community Arts Center. Be sure to join us.
Hi, my name is Evan Ardell. I'm a cellist and a board member of the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey under the direction of Maestro Robert Butts, who is a noted conductor, composer, music lecturer, and friend of mine. I'm thrilled to be part of our 2020 Virtual Summer Music Festival.
Hi, I'm Jehan Kurska, and I'm looking forward to sharing the 2020 Virtual Music Festival with you.
Hi, my name is Paul Zeigler, and I am delighted to be here and as part of the Summer Music Festival 2020.
Hi, I'm Stanley Alexandrovich. I'm a classical guitarist. I'd like to invite everyone to please join us to the 2020 Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey Online Music Festival. It'll be great.
We are the Evergreen Violin Trio, and we'd like to invite you to the Baroque Orchestra of New Jersey Summer Music Festival virtual performance. Hope to see you there.
Nothing keeps musicians down, not even a worldwide pandemic.
So what does the future hold? I'm not sure. We're making plans. Like as I said, I've got the next episode of Bach, Bagels, and Bob scheduled for November 7th. We are going to record a virtual concert in November sometime. I forget the exact date. November 15th, I want to say, with a small ensemble. We're working on a music and manuscript virtual program with Jude Pfister at Washington's headquarters, and we're looking forward to live concerts, hopefully in the spring, but probably not, more likely not until next fall, or maybe next summer. We'll see how everything goes. We'll wish for the best. What I'd like to close with is, for every conductor and every orchestra conductor and every orchestra, it's all about the symphonic works. The young artists, the concertos, the suites, everything else is great, and it's incredible. But in the end, it's how well do you play the symphonies. So that's how we got started, how the orchestra got started, how I got started, how we came to Madison. That was as succinct as I could possibly make it, which means that I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh, I forgot to talk about this," or "I forgot to mention that person," or this landmark event that happened. So I thank you for inviting me. I thank you for sticking with me all night as I went. Looks like I went 20 minutes overtime almost, but I thank you for staying and enjoying it. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, there's one coming up just now.
Okay.
No, I guess.
Maestro Butts, this is Diane Close. Hi.
Diane.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this program. It really was wonderful. Bravo. I'm just amazed at the outstanding, diversified career that you've had. You have so much to be proud of. And you certainly have proven the importance of collaborations. By doing so, you've brought the uplifting joy of such a variety of music to so many grateful audience members. Lucky us, Maestro. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you, Diane. I think that for me, collaboration is the key to the future. I think that the days when orchestras, opera companies, theater companies, nonprofits in general could be totally autonomous and independent are gone. I think for all of us to survive, we have to work together. We have to stay connected, and we have to be a part of a larger arts and social community. I saw a question from Nancy about how the Scarlatti manuscript got to Morristown, which is a good question. It's a question I'm frequently asked. We don't know the complete history of it, but it's been traced by a few people, including Jude and myself, doing some research, and some others. The manuscript is not unknown. It's amazing to me that two nuns from College of St. Elizabeth actually authenticated the manuscript back in the late 1960s. But their only mention of it was in an obscure journal in a very short article that maybe nobody read. Or if somebody read, they probably believed it was a copy. It couldn't have been the original because most of Scarlatti's manuscripts are in Naples or Rome. But it is the original, and it was authenticated as his handwriting. The way it got to Morristown, for those who know the history of the Morristown National Park, there was a wealthy manuscript collector named Lloyd Smith. And Lloyd Smith actually donated the land. I think this is the story I know. Donated the land that became Jockey Hollow Park. But he donated it to the government on the stipulation that somewhere on the park property, a museum would be built that would archive, when he died in 1953 or 54, his whole manuscript collection would be bequeathed to the government and would be housed in the archives, which are in the Washington Headquarters Museum, which is in back of the Ford Mansion in Morristown. And the manuscript collection is enormous. Jude tells me there's over 300,000 manuscripts.
How do you send this?
Of which only one is music that we know. There are some books, first edition published books, but only one manuscript, and that's the Scarlatti. So how did that get into the manuscript? Well, apparently Lloyd Smith purchased it in a book auction in the 1920s. The thinking by Jude and others is that he didn't purchase it because of the music, because there's no evidence he was into music, but he purchased it because, even more exciting to me, I guess, than the music, or at least as exciting as the music, is it's one of only a handful of manuscripts of this importance, of this magnitude, in the United States that is complete with its dedicatory letter, which is another way of knowing this has to be the original manuscript, because the letter from Scarlatti to his patron, whom I can't tell you who it is because neither of us can read the handwriting well enough to recognize the name, but it was somebody in Rome, probably a priest or a cardinal, and the letter is in archaic Italian, 17th century.
I kind of
Italian.
lost this.
Even my Italian expert friends have trouble with reading old. It's like trying to read Old English or something. And so many words have changed meaning, but it describes what Scarlatti wanted in terms of performance practice, how he wanted to perform, and in his big signature at the very bottom. So it's his letter and his manuscript. And Lloyd Smith purchased it in the 1920s. The thinking is that the auction house got it from an antiquarian bookstore in London. And it appears that perhaps they got it from a woman named Alice Jennings. If that's the case, Alice Jennings was a descendant of Charles Jennings. And that Jennings was the librettist. He wrote the text for Handel, for Messiah, and other oratorios back in the 1730s, 1740s. So how did Jennings get it, if indeed he did? Well, we know that when Handel died, he left a trunk full of manuscripts to Jennings. We don't know what was in it. So this, we're just guessing. So let's go back even further. Handel was born in Halle, what is now Germany. But when he was young, maybe in his late teens, he went to Italy. And while he was in Italy, he got to know some of the leading musicians, especially in Rome, where he was very successful. And among the musicians he got to know were Arcangelo Corelli and Alessandro and Domenico Scarlatti. What we think, or we know, is that when Handel left Italy in 1711 to move to London, Scarlatti's parting gift was a suitcase or a case full of oratorio manuscripts from the 1690s that Scarlatti said he didn't need anymore and Handel might find inspiring. So my thinking is that this manuscript from 1693, which by 1711 would have been an old manuscript, nobody would be performing it anymore, may have been one of the manuscripts he gave to Handel. And when Handel died, he bequeathed it to Jennings, who went through his family, went to this bookstore, got to this auction, purchased by Lloyd Smith, and bequeathed to the American government. That's as close as we can get to figuring out the history of the manuscript and why this major 1693 manuscript resides at Washington's headquarters here in Morristown, New Jersey.
Wow.
Wow.
That's an exciting story in itself.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's and you did a marvelous job. It was so wonderful to hear all the music and to trace the history, your history. That was very, very interesting. Thank you very, very much.
It was a great pleasure. I've enjoyed this immensely. Even though I know I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh, I forgot to talk about it." I know there'll be something I forgot.
If anybody has any more questions, you can also send those questions to either Dave or myself, and we'll get them to the proper place. We'll get them to Bob.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Stay safe. Stay well. I can't wait until the time when we can physically actually get together and say hello.
Yes.
Yes. We all feel that way. And thank you, Susan, for setting this up. This was marvelous. Really was.
Well, it was David.
Okay, David, thank you very much, David. It really is. It was a wonderful program. Absolutely wonderful. It was mind-boggling to think of what a body of work has been done over the years. I mean, the clips that he chose were just wonderful. And I know that it's a minuscule amount of the body of work, but it was wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful. Along the way, I've had the good fortune of being able to work with some incredibly talented people. I couldn't ask for a better board of directors than I've had for the full 25 years of the orchestra. They put up with me. I think other orchestras' boards probably wouldn't put up with me at all. But my board puts up with me. And I say I want to do a Baroque opera, and they say fine. They say I want to do a contemporary opera, they say fine. I say, I want a premiere work by an Italian composer that nobody ever heard of, and they say fine. So it enables me to reach out and accomplish whatever I could, but I couldn't do any of it without Joanne and Lisa and Doug and everybody on board.
Well, you have such a creative genius, Bob. Really do. I mean, you amaze me. You never cease to amaze me. And I'm sure that's how anyone who knows you feels. It's wonderful.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.